What are the top reasons for a candidate to be rejected?
A big one has been uh, the reason for joining, like the reason for wanting to be a part of Code Chrysalis. Because I think from our Instagram and things like that, people are like, oh my gosh, it's such a great culture. Like, there's like dogs and like it's like fun and silly, et cetera, et cetera. And like, yeah, these are, reasons to work at Code Chrysalis, but they shouldn't be the only reason that you want to work here. So that's definitely been one. Um, Another one has, yeah, like the opposite of what I said before, just coming in and just focusing on like, okay, what can I learn from Code Chrysalis, rather than thinking a bit beyond that for like, what are things that I can change, right? So I'd say that someone who is not very autonomous, so someone who we feel like might need a lot of like to-do lists and things like that to get them settled in. So we really want people to be able to, like, if they get put in a situation, be able to kind of like pick together, okay, since I wasn't given specific instructions and my objective is this, well then here are the things I think I need to do to hit my objective, right? We want to look for people who can create that structure on their own, while we might not have it, because while we're doing our best, I'm sure there's instances where we don't have that. um, and not asking enough questions during the interview, I think, is something that we do flag down, because yeah, we like the interview process, the job hunting process. I mean, it's like dating, right? And I think a lot of job seekers, they look at interviews as one directional. Like, okay, the company just asks me and the company tries to see if I'm a good match. It should be bi-directional as well. Like the candidate should also be assessing us for whether or not we're a good fit. And I think when people don't ask questions, it makes us wonder if they've properly thought about what it's like to work here.
As Code Chrysalis expands its business in Japan, what are the crucial points you look for when hiring?
First big thing that we look for is someone who is not afraid to ask questions and give feedback. I think that is huge. We want someone who, of course, can get along with people, but can also bring in another point of view, right? Like we call it, I think a lot of companies talk about culture fit. I like to look at it as culture add. So, what is something new that you're bringing to us? So I think that's the first really big one. Second one is actually having an idea of where you want to go, like where you would like your career to be in a few years, and having a clear idea for how this role in this position can get you to whatever that goal might be. And I don't worry too much whether or not that goal includes Code Chrysalis. Like, I don't believe that you should stay at a company forever and ever and ever. But I do want to see, like, how can you view this role and how can it help you get there? Um, Third one is being able to identify challenges and come up with solutions, like actionable plans. As a small company, we've got a lot of problems. We have a lot of things that need to be done, and we are looking for people who can identify them and get started on fixing them, right? We're not a company that can just like hand people a to-do list and that would just be their job. That's not what we're here to do. So I would say like those are the three things that we really look for, that I especially look for when I'm hiring.
Could you give me some examples of a recent hire that you've made and what stood out about that specific candidate?
So we've made a few recent hires, and I think something that is similar for all of them is that they knew their value and they advocated for it. So I would say that that is important. Like they all had this confidence of like, I know what I'm capable of, and this is how I'm going to use my abilities to help your company. And I think that is such a strong pitch when you're trying to get a company to hire you, right? Because it's I think a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm looking to learn from you, et cetera, et cetera. That's fine and good, but I want to know, like, how are you going to connect whatever experience that you have or whatever skills that you have to helping us succeed, right? And having the confidence of being able to do that. That's so important.
What is your view on making the career shift from big companies to a startup like Code Chrysalis?
Yeah, so I think a big one is like a mindset shift. So at big companies, you're going into a system that is already pretty laid out. Like there's processes for things because of that company's size and experience and history, right? Like there's a process for if this thing happens because it's happened in the past. I think for smaller companies, we don't have as much of that. And so a lot of it is going to require you to come up with, like, okay, this happened. How do we deal with that? So I would say, like, that mindset shift is really big. Um, I would also say in smaller companies, we're just more prone to change. And that's because, the way that we do things, going from 20 people to 30 people, that's going to change a lot of how we did things before. Something that, maybe took like 1 hour of people's week, that can easily grow to a full-time job when you go from 20 to 30 people. And I think having that understanding of like, okay, this is like we're going through a transitional stage and it's sort of rocky. That's fairly, I would say, if the company is doing well, we want to minimize it, but it is also quite common. It's like very much a balancing act, right? Like if things are stable for too long, it can feel like, okay, I don't know if we're growing as much. So being mindful of that is really important. And then also when you're aware of like, okay, I think I can foresee a rocky period happening, we're able to better brace ourselves for it by putting in precautionary measures, by putting in structure and processes. So that identification of like this is going to be a problem, we don't have a process for it, is really key. And I think that's actually where people coming from big companies to small companies can be of use, because at a big company there's processes for a lot of things, and when they go to a small company and they foresee something being a problem, like, oh, there's a client and like we haven't accounted for like this issue with that client, they'll be able to identify it and create that process. Like, oh, this is kind of what we did at my last company, and we can adapt it here so that it works well for our size. So I think like these are things that when you're making a shift from big company to small company are things to look out for and be aware of.